Hey racers, and welcome to another live stream. I've got a slightly different setup here. Maybe not so much that you guys will notice, but it's definitely noticeable for me. I had a whole stack of books and shit before trying to jack up my phone to get it at the right angle. So I've got this new fancy tripod, which hopefully works out a little bit better, instead of having half my desk full of stuff to try and stack up the camera. Anyway, today's topic for today's live stream is exercises that you can use to help to strengthen up your back. So I actually had this written down as something that I wanted to go through in terms of tackling back pain and back discomfort while you're out riding. And then someone on one of my previous videos left a comment regarding back pain, back discomfort, or tightness for cross-country enduros or longer enduro rides. So I thought today would be a good day to tackle that and test out the new setup at the same time. So, hey David, first of all, just give me a shout out, give me a thumbs up if you're on the live stream. Lets me know you're here. It's good to see who's on the live streams or on the calls. So, first of all, I guess the first thing with back pain is it is a common problem, not so much for motocross guys that I work with. I find it's more for the enduro guys that do like really 3-hour plus events. It's like when you're on the bike for really, really long periods of time, all at once with minimal breaks, okay, or minimal rest periods. And so the reason you want to overcome that is because I know what happens when you go and ride and you get a sore back is instead of focusing on riding how you should be riding, what starts to happen is you're starting to ride around pain and ride around being comfortable. Hey Chris, and anytime you start to ride around pain and ride around being comfortable, that's when your riding goes out the window, because now instead of having your focusing on the skills, focusing on riding, focusing on technique, focusing on lines, focusing on being competitive, now you're just focusing on, okay, how can I just survive the rest of this ride, the rest of this race, and not feel like my back's about to explode. So first things first, with back pain is, first thing before I go into exercises and stuff like that, which I'm sure you guys are all can't wait to hear about, is one simple fix or one simple thing to look at for you enduro guys is, and I actually found this out through doing mountain biking. Hey Sean, there was a few years back I got back into mountain biking. So when I got myself a mountain bike, started to do longer rides, longer rides for me anyway, for mountain biking, which were a couple of hours. Okay, then I was doing about, the longer ride that I was doing was about 20 Ks. And so before that, I'd only ever done short rides, right? Didn't even have a camelback. It was like just bring a couple of drink bottles with you, go for these short little 5K mountain bike rides, and it was just a bit more fun. And so I wasn't using them for fitness, purely just because I enjoyed going for a mountain bike ride. And so when I started doing these longer rides, obviously it was a bit harder to bring drink bottles with me, and I needed to make sure I was keeping hydrated. So I went and got a camelback. But the other thing that happened as well is when I was doing the shorter rides, like if something happened, like, the bike shit itself, the chain snapped, you got a flat tire, I didn't need to carry any spares. It was like walking distance back to the car. Like, yeah, it would be a pain in the ass, but, you'd be able to do it. When I started going on these 20K rides, and especially as you go some of these bigger hills where you clock up a fair few Ks fairly quickly, I was like, okay, I need to actually get spares, because if I'm like 10 Ks away from the car, like halfway through the loop, it's going to be a long walk home with a broken bike. So I started buying spare tubes, getting a camelback with water, carrying tools and stuff as well to if I needed to change a wheel, change tires, spare chains, things like that. And the reason I carry a spare chain is because I actually went on one ride with no chain and the chain snapped. Luckily enough, it was at the start. So started collecting like all these spares and stuff to bring out with me to cover bad situations, or at least give me enough tools to be able to make it home. And so what started to happen though is I started to get this back pain, really tight back tightness. And the funny thing is, I would go and ride these types of trails that I'd never had a problem with before. But now that I started riding with the camelback and having all these tools on my back, now I was starting to have an issue with these rides. Hey Joe, and so the problem for me is, or the solution that I came up with, found, who knows how I came to it, was that with my camelback, I actually didn't have it set up properly. So I know for a lot of you cross-country guys, you have a camelback and you've got tools and things, same thing, right? Your bike shits itself, you get a flat tire, whatever it is, you got some level of spares there, plus a shit ton of water as well. And so what I found is when I set up the camelback, I had too much slack in the camelback. Let me just bump this chair up so you can see a little bit better. So I had too much slack in the camelback. And so what happened is at the top of the camelback there was a gap between my upper back and the camelback, okay, when I was riding. And so what happened is I had the straps over, but with the weight in my camelback, obviously when you put your tools in, your tools drop to the bottom of the camelback, right? Well, for me, they did anyway. So I had all of this weight, the middle of the camelback bottom. Same with water. Water drops, right? The water is not equally spread out through the whole camelback. All the weight tends to drop to the bottom, and so from halfway to the bottom is where most of the weight is, not at the top. And so what happened is because the camelback, the straps weren't done up as tight as what they should have been, and there was weight at the back, what will happen is I'd be leaning over, so I'd be on the bike like this, okay, on the mountain bike, but there would be a gap between my upper back and where the pack was. And so what happened is that weight was continually pulling me back. So it might have only been, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 kilos, however much stuff you have in a camelback, including the water. And that weight was constantly pulling back on me. Because remember, most of the weight was at the bottom here, okay, and in the middle. So what was happening is this bit was heavy and pushing back like that, and it was pulling me back. But because I'm on the mountain bike leaning forward, my body was resisting that the whole time. So I'm trying to keep in this position on my mountain bike, and the camelback with the weight in it is pulling me the opposite way. So the thing that's helping to not pull me back off the bike is my back has to work to keep me in that forward angle, okay? And so in a short period of time, it's not really a problem. When you're clocking up a lot of Ks and I was spending a lot of time on the mountain bike, that's when my back would start to get really jacked up because it was only doing a small amount of work to hold this weight on my back, okay, or resist me from getting sent over the back of the mountain bike. But because it was done for such long periods of time, my back was really starting to fatigue and get sore. So the way that I fixed that is I tried to redistribute the weight in my pack a little bit more efficiently. Instead of having all the heavy stuff right at the bottom, I tried to spread things out as much as I can. There was some pockets at the top that I wasn't using, so I put tubes and stuff in there to get a little bit of the weight up top. But what I did is I tightened up the straps as well. Okay, so pulled the straps really tight so the weight was up higher, up on my back. And also there was no gap between my upper back and the camelback when I was riding. It's almost like that camelback was strapped to my body, okay, it couldn't move. And so what that meant is when I was mountain biking and I was going riding and I was in the attack position, the weight was up on my back and sitting there. It wasn't trying to pull me backwards. And that helped a shit ton with back pain and just getting that back tightness. I could focus then on my mountain biking rather than that. So the same thing for you guys that do cross country. Or do longer rides on the motocross bike, it's a similar thing. So first of all, before you try and play around with exercises, play around and make sure you've got your pack organised properly. And you've got the weight distributed properly, you've got the straps done up properly, and there's no gap between your upper back and where the pack is. So that's one thing. Now, in terms of actual stuff or actual exercises to do, if you're on the bike and your pack's set up properly and that's not the problem, and whether you ride with the pack or not with the pack, you still have back soreness or tightness. Oftentimes it's not actually your back that's the issue, okay? So our back, our spinal erectors, the muscles in our back are like this big, okay, on either side of our spine, right? And you can feel the muscles that run up and down next to your spine as well. Like they're not that big, okay? In comparison to the size of your legs, okay? Or the size of your ass or the size of your hamstrings. Nowhere near as big. So what happens when we're going and riding and our back is getting jacked up? It's probably because you're using your back a lot to move the bike around and to get your ass up and down off the seat. So I'll show you what I mean. So if I take getting up and down off a bike, like getting your ass up and down, okay, is very similar to a deadlift. So if I bend over like this, okay, this is like the top of a deadlift position. So if I'm deadlifting from the floor, that's a deadlift, right? So this top portion of the deadlift here is pretty much, hey Ben, is pretty much exactly what's happening when you're on the bike, okay? Except we've got our arms up here in the attack position. You're sitting down in the seat to standing, okay? Or sitting down, standing, whatever angle you're at, okay? It's hard to demonstrate bike positions without a bike. It's a very similar position. Now, people have the same problem with a deadlift. So what happens is a lot of people get back pain and back soreness, hey Sean, through deadlifting, okay? And the reason that happens is when they're lifting, okay, they lift up and watch my lower back. There's a little bit of rounding in the lower back, and the lower back is lifting the weight as they come up. Okay, so they start here, and the lower back here is doing the lifting when they're coming up. Okay, so the back's relatively straight. Okay, they might be making the effort, but still the lower back is doing most of the work. Now, you should be able to do a deadlift and be able to deadlift again in the afternoon, okay, and deadlift again the next day. Deadlifting isn't a back workout, okay? You shouldn't be getting a really sore, jacked up back from doing deadlifts because your back is not the dominant muscle group. It's your legs and your lats, these muscles under here, that are the dominant muscle groups for deadlifting, okay? So, how do we fix that? Well, that's the problem. First of all, let me cover one base before we get to second base. So, if you're using your back for deadlifts, number one, you're not going to be as strong because you're using these small muscle groups to try and lift weights, okay? You're not going to be as strong in comparison to if you actually use your legs, your glutes, your hamstrings, or your quads. So what we want to do is we need to get your body used to, instead of using your back when you're on the bike to get up and down off the seat, we need to get you used to using your legs and your ass, okay, and your hamstrings to get your ass up off the seat. And that's really the problem. So you might be using a little bit of back, okay? And if you go for a ride for half an hour, it's not really a problem. But then what happens is you start to ride for longer periods of time, and all that little bit of effort at the start starts to compound over your ride and starts to become an issue. The other thing that happens is maybe your legs get fatigued as well, okay? So your legs get fatigued. What happens when your legs get fatigued and sore? You stop using those muscles. You want to use a fresh group of muscles, okay? Because it doesn't hurt and it feels more comfortable. So you shift from using your legs at the start of the ride to using your lower back at the end of the ride. So ultimately what we want to do is, can getting your back stronger help? Yes, it can, okay? But we have to remember these muscles are like this big, okay? We got these muscles that run up the side of your back. We've got very small muscles in comparison to other muscle groups. So can we make your back stronger by doing back exercises? Yes, you can, okay? You could do like good mornings, you could do back extensions, you can do heaps of like glute ham developer work on the GHD machine. Okay, there's different back exercises that you can do. However, that's only going to give you a small improvement, okay? Because again, they're these tiny muscle groups here, okay? So if these tiny muscle groups are capable of this much strength and we get them to this much strength, okay, cool, that's going to give you a little bit of progress. But the real problem is we're overloading these small muscle groups. We've got these small muscle groups that are doing way too much work for what they're actually capable of, right? It's like having a big semi-trailer and getting your little Hyundai 4-cylinder i30 and expecting it to pull this big semi-trailer, and then going, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to give the i30 a tune, and we're going to put a new exhaust on it, okay, and we're going to make sure we get more air into this i30 so it can pull this semi-trailer. Now, in terms of pulling the semi-trailer, doing all those things to the i30 is probably going to give you this much progress, because at the end of the day, an i30 is not designed to pull a big semi-trailer. What we need is a big V8, okay, or a V10 or a V12 or whatever the big trucks are to pull this big semi-trailer. And so that way, we're going to get the job done properly, and it's going to give us 10 times better results than any type of work that we could have done to get that i30 working. Same thing happens with your back, okay? You can do a whole heap of back exercises and extensions and stretches and things like that, and that's going to be the equivalent of trying to do up an i30 to pull a semi-trailer. What we need is we just need to get a V8, a V10, a V12 pulling this semi-trailer to make the job really easy, okay? It doesn't matter how good you make that i30 pull, the V8, V10, V12 is going to outperform that any day of the week, okay? Stock standard, straight off the shelf. So that's what we need to do with our muscle groups. Instead of overloading these small muscle groups, we need to use big muscle groups that are designed to do big jobs. And the way that we do that is through your training. So the two best movements you can use to stop using your back and start using the big muscle groups, the big V8, V10, V12 muscle groups, is things like deadlifts and squats, okay? Now, the reason deadlifts are great, again, like we just talked about, if you're doing them properly, again, if you go on deadlift and all you do is feel back pain, okay, or back tightness or back fatigue the whole time, you're not performing the movement correctly. There's something there that's breaking down technique-wise, okay? So when we can do it properly, what's happening is we're getting our arse, our hamstrings, and our quads working really well to be able to bend and flex our hips. Exactly like we do when we get our arse up and down off the seat, okay? If you go and deadlift and you get a sore back while you deadlift, chances are you get a sore back when you go and ride as well, because you're used to using your back, okay, to extend, to open and close your hips. You're using your back the whole time rather than using the big muscle groups. Squats are also great, okay, because again, we're teaching you how to flex at the hips with our squats, okay, and how to use your quads, your hamstrings, and your glutes rather than using your lower back. Again, if you do back squats with a barbell and you get a sore back, again, okay, you haven't got the right muscle groups working. You're trying to get an I-30 to move a semi-trailer rather than being able to get a V12 to move a semi-trailer. Okay, so sometimes it's not about, when you're getting a specific symptom on the bike, especially like with a sore back, it's not always about strengthening that area that's getting sore. It's about going, okay, is that muscle group even supposed to be doing the work that hey Jason, is this muscle group even supposed to be doing the work that I'm giving it at the moment? Hey Bill. Or am I using the wrong muscle group? Do I need to somehow move the load from this small muscle group that's getting overloaded to a bigger muscle group that's going to easily handle the job? And so they're the two best movements, deadlifts and squats. But again, you can't just do those exercises, okay, and then expect to get better. You have to be performing the deadlift properly, okay, and not be getting a sore back from the deadlift, and same with your squats, okay? The goal of those exercises is not to strengthen your back. The goal of those exercises is to stop your back from doing as much work and to get your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, those big V12 muscle groups doing majority of the work. And when you can do that, not only will your performance on the bike start to get better, but you're going to unload your back, it's not going to get fatigued and sore, and then you can focus on your riding and racing throughout the full ride. So hopefully that all makes sense. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a like on the video. It helps to share it around and show all the other riders and racers the content that I put together. If you've got a friend that suffers from a sore back or has an issue, always whinges about their back when you go out riding, tag them below in the comments, so that hopefully that gives them some help or some guidance as well. Otherwise, that's it for today. Enjoy your weekend, guys. Enjoy the long weekend. Hopefully you guys have Anzac Day off and you can get out and do some riding. Otherwise, I will chat to you guys soon. See ya.